The fuck is going on? Is there gonna be a class or not? There will be a class. I heard it. Thank you. Apologies for the delay. In the previous episode, we examined why women earn less money than men.
De most, ha ez nem piros, én meghalok. Nagyon mérges leszek. Jövök fel, mint a talajvíz. Most már ne szórakozzunk. Faszomat. Mármint, hogy elnézést.
And in this video, we seek to answer why the market doesn't reward the professions preferred by women in the same way. So, it can be said that if you earn enough money not to starve, let's say you have basic financial security, from that point on, you decide how much extra money you want to earn and what you're willing to do or sacrifice for it. Because higher salaries are far from free. Oh, no way. Typically male-dominated jobs may pay more, but in exchange they are much more stressful, require greater responsibility, are soul-crushing, and they practically have an unwritten rule that the more of a sociopath you are, the more you will succeed in them. Take the political career.
Az idei országgyűlési választásokon a Fidesz 4-gyel több Lászlót indított, mint nőt.
Look, I think it can generally be said about our politicians that they are the scum of the earth and they deserve every bit of criticism and insult, no matter which side they are on. But it's also true that it's quite impressive how they endure the ocean of shit that gets dumped on them. In fact, you could say that prestige, influence, fame, and of course let's not forget the high salary, come as a reward for handling all that political mudslinging so well. And men are better at this. At least more of them tend to be good at it. They are more comfortable in this environment, they enjoy throwing shit themselves, and they are less bothered by getting covered in shit than they are attracted to the advantages of a political career. And we know women. There are far fewer among them who could or would want to compete with men in this.
És egyébként a kvótával ez nem fog változni, csak annyi fog történni, hogy a eddig kevésbé tehetséges, de a szociopátiás közeg iránt vonzódó nő, aki eddig nem jutott el a parlamentbe, hanem csak önkormányzati képviselő lett, elnézést kérek minden önkormányzati képviselő hölgytől, az most a parlamentig el fog jutni.
Actually, one of my main issues with the women's quota is precisely this. That if a woman enters parliament based on her gender rather than her competence, then she only has to perform at a lower level to get in, while her male counterparts will have an even harder time than before. And beyond the fact that this is terribly discriminatory, since it disadvantages a group of people purely based on birth, and beyond the fact that this will ultimately result in outright less competent representatives in parliament, since some of them wouldn't have gotten in based on their abilities, it actually does the most harm to women themselves, because every woman's competence will be constantly questioned whether she got in based on her performance or just because of her genitals.
Én kvótával jutottam be, az, hogy ez mennyiben befolyásolja, mennyiben minősíti a munkámat, azt önökre bízom és a választókra, hogy eldöntsék.
Another problem I have with the women's quota is that its supporters can't quite decide whether a woman is equally suited for the position as a man, so she could compete fairly with them, or whether she isn't equally suited, that's why a quota is necessary. And they can never escape this spiral.
We got him, aren't you?
And anyway, what if there are fewer female politicians? I never understood why anyone cares how many left-handed people, how many with glasses, how many with brown hair, how many tall, how many fat, how many with RH plus blood type, how many gay, how many Jewish people sit in the parliament. Seriously, why is it that counting Jewish people in parliament is considered the biggest crime one could commit, and I completely agree with that, but counting men and complaining that there are too many of them is the most progressive stance one can take? But here comes the usual argument, that this is a completely different situation because the goal is for women to bring a new perspective, a fresh approach, a different worldview to this macho, male-dominated political world. And it's so funny that this argument is completely and utterly destroyed by every single female politician, as they are practically the first ones to shed all their feminine traits and behave exactly like their male political counterparts. But obviously, This profession demands this behavior is the only way to succeed in it. And the female politicians who have made it the furthest are at the extreme end of their own bell curve. And the same goes for the corporate world. So you can make movies about how all the top executives are men and how disgusting this patriarchal world is.
Oh, but since I came all this way, could I just meet the woman in charge? Your CEO?
Oh, that would be me.
Oh, your CFO.
Me.
Your COO.
Here.
President of the Barbie division.
I'm a man with no power. Does that make me a woman?
Are any women in charge?
But it's not because we live in a male-dominated, oppressive world, but because a much larger proportion of women are repulsed by this soul-crushing path that leads to the executive chair. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm actually arguing that women are much more normal people. But no, who cares about that? They earn less and they don't have the top jobs, because that's the only thing that matters in this fucking world.
Túl korai.
But even if we don't look at the highest positions, though interestingly the whining is always only about that, it's still observable that the jobs men take on, aside from the salary, are much less favorable for the person doing them. For example, they are much more dangerous. In the EU, men are 13 times more likely to die in workplace accidents than women. Basically, male-dominated professions don't hesitate much.
I think I might just put a knife in it.
I think that's a really good idea.
And we haven't even talked about jobs that require physical strength, involve unexpected situations that demand immediate solutions, carry higher risks, or about sports-related or other professions. For example, I had a colleague who, while sitting in a dentist chair with a saliva ejector in his mouth, explained via speakerphone to the people on site how to reposition the formwork, because 15 cement mixers and 2 cranes were waiting on the construction site with a chandelier-level rental cost, and it really mattered how they poured that hundreds of millions worth of concrete. In forints. Now, I've seen very few women demonstrate that level of responsibility, dedication, and unconditional flexibility towards their work, and obviously a boss rewards that differently. When choosing a job, there are countless factors to consider, and salary is just one of them. But can someone please explain me why the only thing we ever talk about is the wage gap? Why isn't there a stress gap, measuring whose job is more soul-crushing? Or a risk gap, measuring who takes on more risk? Or a dangerous gap, whose workplace is more hazardous? More women should die at work! Shh, not now, Kathy. And I won't even get into the fact that, for example, what percentage of the homeless are men? What percentage of prisoners, suicide victims, or crime victims are men? Which gender spends more money, by the way, or which one actually has more money? Karen, is this patriarchal, oppressive male society in the room with us right now? Although, why would an economist ask that? And it so perfectly exposes feminist thinking that they demand female quotas in political, corporate, and other prestigious positions, but never for coal miners, street sweepers, or bricklayers. Although, to be fair, I have been to a construction site where women worked, and I was very surprised. And they even told me not to be surprised, they are Moldovan immigrants and they do plastering and smoothing here. I said okay, it was weird. But obviously that's a huge exception. So, with all this in mind, please guess. What is the wage gap in Hungary? By how many % do women earn less than men in this country? What could be that magical number that characterizes this backward male chauvinist country? 17.5%. Oh my dear, I totally thought that based on everything we've discussed, men would be earning twice or 2.5 times more than women. 17.5%. Is this what all the whining is about? 17.5% even though men and women fundamentally apply for completely different jobs and do completely different kinds of work. You get it, right? In men's jobs, this is practically the only factor that compensates for their shittier and harder work. So can we maybe just calmly agree that in exchange for these disadvantages, men get barely 20% more pay, and that's it, everyone's happy, we all move on, goodbye. But no! No! This, my friends, is the absolute patriarchal male dominance that one gender earns 400,000 forints and the other earns 480, even though they took completely different jobs. Ridiculous. And another thing. Let's look at which countries have the smallest gender wage gap in Europe. Luxembourg, okay, well, expected that. Italy, Romania, Belgium, Poland, what? And which countries have an even bigger wage gap than we do? Germany, Czech Republic, Austria, Switzerland, what? So, it can be stated that the wage gap between men and women has absolutely no connection to a country's level of development or its progressive advancement. There is no goal for women to earn proportionally more, a country doesn't become better because of it, and the best countries don't have the smallest wage gaps. This number simply shows what kinds of jobs men and women take on in a given country. Oh, Zoli, that sounds so nice, but it's so obvious you're a guy and you have absolutely no clue how this actually works in reality. How many times is a woman looked down on at work just because she's a woman? Or not trusted with tasks that a man would be given without question? Or how a 30-year-old woman without kids stands a chance at a job interview? Or how many comments, harassments, and insinuations she has to put up with from her boss? How often is a woman interrupted? That's not true at all. The things you just listed may have some truth to them, but since you brought it up, let's dissect a bit this topic a bit further. Okay, if your boss is harassing you, report them. Done. There is nothing more to explain here. If you've entered childbearing age and this puts you at a disadvantage in a job interview, then I have no idea what you should do. But I already said in the first episode that unfortunately biology isn't fair. In return, you live longer, 1-to-1. If you're looked down upon or not trusted with serious tasks because you're a woman, then leave that place. In fact, not just then. If anything bothers you at your workplace, your tasks, your salary, your equipment, your colleagues, waking up early, overtime, the office location, the lack of home office, the room temperature, or even the color of the walls, then switch jobs. Companies should do everything to make sure you want to work for them. One of the not-so-hidden goals of this video series is to boost workers' awareness of their own bargaining power, to make it clear that you're not doing your workplace a favor. This is just another market transaction like any other, just like the store owner isn't doing you a favor by letting you shop there. And besides, if a company starts filtering candidates and treating them differently based on gender instead of competence, then that company will fall behind in the market. And the companies hate that. That's why they don't waste time on such nonsense. They do everything they can to squeeze the maximum ability out of everyone in order to generate the highest possible profit. And they don't care about anything else. Sure, maybe at some tiny, old-fashioned company, there is still a boss who values his sexism more than money. Possibly. But in that case, just leave that place, I'm telling you. If you stay, they will never learn from it. Another thing I keep hearing is, if you're a woman, you start off in a much weaker position in meetings or negotiations, you're interrupted more, taken less seriously, not listened to, etc.
Kedves hallgatók, polgártársaim! Ez volt a mansplaining a gyakorlatban, amikor egy férfi lekezelő stílusban és kéretlenül kioktat egy nőt, félbeszakítja vagy befejezi a mondatát, mert az az alapfeltételezése, hogy a nő kevesebbet ér vagy tud.
And you know what? I even agree with this. There probably is an unspoken sexist bias in society. However, from my own experience with negotiations, I can tell you this. There is a scale from -10 to 10 determining how seriously people take you. Even when people don't know you yet, you're not starting from zero because your appearance, clothing, behavior, style, handshake strength, and a ton of other factors can immediately add or take away a point or two from you right from the start. And yes, being a woman might be worth -1 point in this system. So for example, I, Zoltán Lung, as a man, would start at +1 compared to a woman, but since I have a high-pitched voice and I'm not very tall, that's -2 points, and because I've never worn a dress shirt to work in my life, that's -1 more, so I start a negotiation at -3 instead of -4. Yay, male privilege! And anyway, let me share with you my big negotiation trick, which I have perfected over many years. The key is you walk in confidently, greet people, shake hands and make eye contact, then you sit down, but you don't speak. You might sit there for half an hour without saying a word while the others keep talking, But then, when a question comes up that only you can answer or that you have a strong opinion about, you force your way into the conversation and explain your thoughts clearly. Then you go back to sitting in silence. If you do this 3 or 4 times, people will start to see you as someone worth listening to, because whenever you speak, it actually contributes something valuable to the discussion. And just like that, you can easily move yourself up to +8 on that scale, and a woman can do this just as well. I say it again, if people see you as a smart, valuable, capable team member, then it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, they will listen to you. And in general, whether in work, negotiations, or any aspect of life, being a woman matters exactly this much. A tiny bit of initial skepticism or dismissal, which can be completely flipped in the opposite direction at any time. Now, compare that to the disadvantages faced by someone who's a minority, or living with a disability, being poor, gay, from the countryside, old, speech impaired, fat. But no, none of these people are considered the most disadvantaged in society, but who are? Women. You get it? The majority of society. Ridiculous. And actually, I have noticed that these biases against people, or what, they become most visible when someone tells a story about a third party who inconvenienced them.
Na, a sérült, telepakolta a futószalagot, tehát ezért nem halad a sor.
Whenever someone wrongs another person, like in a car accident, suddenly a regular driver becomes a female driver. But if he's not a woman, then he's a black guy. If not a black guy, then a grumpy old man. If not old, then a junk car driver. But if the car is in good condition, then it's the bald guy in a BMW. The point is, people instinctively degrade others based on whatever visible trait they notice first. And being a woman is just one of these traits, yet every workplace, professional, or personal story about mistreatment is always framed as if it's specifically targeted against women, instead of recognizing that literally everyone can be subjected to judgment and stereotyping based on external traits. And by the way, the entire feminist narrative works exactly the same way.
A probléma mindig az, amikor jön egy ideológia, és a világ összes igazságtalanságát egyetlen egy tengelyre akarja felfeszíteni. Ahogyan a nemzeti szocializmus felfeszítette a népfajok harcára, ahogyan a bolsevizmus felfeszítette a társadalmi osztályok harcára, az osztályharcra, úgy a gender felfeszíti ugyanezt a nemek harcára, egy áldozati kultúrát, egy áldozati retorikát, egy áldozati szerepet visz.
And obviously, these prejudices against women fundamentally stem from some kind of societal experience. For example, the idea that a woman won't assert her company's interests as firmly as a man, which is why people are hesitant to entrust her with significant responsibilities. But this too can be so easily overturned. A woman can absolutely be assertive, even online.
Oda tartom a seggemet, az belefingok, bazd meg.
Ezt ki mondta? Ezt ki mondta, gyerekek? De most komolyan kérdezem.
And a man can just as easily be conflict avoidant in the same situation.
Most vissza fogok kérdezni, légy szíves, írjál egy kódpéldát.
Tudom, bazd.
De megpróbálok én is egy kódpéldát írni.
It's just that these are not our general experiences, so obviously everyone has a little bit of prejudice. Even women have prejudices against women. Oh, Zoli, but do you see? You're doing it again. These broad societal explanations sound so nice and great, but I can see that you're not exactly being disturbed by the facts. Let me give you a statistic. Out of the 500 largest American companies, only 6.6%, which is just 33 companies, have female CEOs. Yes, this is exactly what I was. But these female CEOs, within the same sector, with the same education, professional experience, and background, earn on average 18% less than their male counterparts. Now, take a moment to learn something. This is called the glass ceiling phenomenon. So, what's your explanation for this? The same thing I said before. They are not doing the same job. But I literally just read, same sector, same education. From a market perspective, they are not doing the same job. How could they not be? Same professional experience, same background. Oh, you naive little woman. Do you think that's what the labor market values? Isn't it? Very much not. And this brings us to the most important thing that will shed light on this entire topic. What exactly does the labor market value? Because the labor market doesn't reward education, professional experience, or even performance at all, but rather some very, very strange things. But we will only get into these strange things in the next episode. Until then, goodbye, all the best. I hope you'll have a great time. Thank you for being with me, and so on. We will meet again.
Viszontlátásra.
Nem bírom. Védne az ő képernyőn léptem ki. Nem mindegy.
Well, you know... Oh, bassza meg. Oh, picsá.